Hi there, everyone. My name's Edward. I'm from a company called Little Data, and I'm here to talk to you about how to focus e-commerce growth on customer lifetime value. So why is lifetime value such a hot topic? Well, for e-commerce, increasingly they really need to understand not just the revenue you might get from a single one-off transaction, but how does that customer look if you aggregate up all of their orders and transactions, so that you can get a better idea of who are the right customers to acquire and how much is it worth to acquire them. So simply put, online marketing is becoming much more competitive, and without insights into that whole customer journey, not just the journey before a single transaction, but the journey across multiple transactions, the customer's lifetime, it's hard to make those decisions right. Before we start, we should say that there are lots of acronyms that really mean the same thing here. So sometimes you'll heard it talk about CLV, customer lifetime value, LTV, not to be confused with financial modeling, but in this context, lifetime value, and then PLV, predicted lifetime value, lifetime customer value. They're all interchangeable in this context, but I'm going to talk about LTV, lifetime value. So we'll talk about how we can get there to the segmentation, but if you can get this richer data about the lifetime value, you can do lots of clever things with it. So obviously the first thing is to actually compute that data. But once you've got that, you might be able to then segment your customers into different lists. So for example, getting a list of your most valuable customers who've lapsed, and we'll talk more about RFM modeling at the end, enables you to then do something with them. You might want to retarget them with email marketing or paid search advertising, just to get them back to buying if they were previously a good buyer for you. And that's got to be much better return on investment than trying to acquire new customers of unknown value. You might want to personalize the customer experience. So not only could you run different kind of ads to those different customer segments, but you could, for example, give high value customers a different landing page experience or a different voucher offer, if you could know who they are. You can analyze the impact, the engagement impact. So understanding whether people who become high lifetime value customers end up, for example, starting with a particular gateway product, or maybe they interact with certain kinds of content on your blog or social channels. And then finally, you'll be able to automate decisions based on that data. So having a constant stream of constantly updated lifetime value per customer is the goal here. So to really get to the lifetime value, we need to really bring three things together. So first of all, we need to have an accurate customer identifier from the e-commerce platform that can enable us to stitch together events across different touch points, but all relating to the same customer. Now, in our Shopify solution, which we'll talk about later, we use the CRM ID or the Shopify customer ID as the source of truth there. Obviously, there are other kinds of user identifiers, hashed emails, cookie identifiers you could use, but we believe that the kind of the customer ID as stored in that central e-commerce platform is the most useful. Finally, you need the lifetime bit of the data. Obviously, the historical bit is essential, as far back in time as you can go. So typically, lifetime is really the lifetime from when you started the tracking. Not it's hard often to go back further than that. But maybe even the predicted lifetime value. So actually trying to go forward in time and saying if this customer follows behavior based on similar attributes to other high value customers, they will become this value in the future. And finally, picking a value for, what is the value that we're aggregating up? Again, it could just be number of orders, but really to be helpful here, I'd say it has to be revenue, because you don't want to optimize for high frequency but low value customers. You might, if you have a high variety of margin products, you might want to optimize for profit, not just revenue, and push that data into your analytics platform. So for example, if we go down the order value route, we can stitch together these products. Let's say the customer's bought a coat, a jacket, gloves, and a cap. They are, there's a certain sum for the order value, and then obviously there's a different sum for the margin contribution of those orders. I'm just going to talk about order value to keep it simple, but as I said, it is possible to push in, for example, into Google Analytics, a margin contribution field per product and sum it up that way. So let's talk first of all about the challenge of capturing the data. Now, Little Data works almost exclusively with the Shopify e-commerce platform, so we're very familiar with that. And we know that if they can get to having this good data, they can make more of their media. They can tailor the ads. They can find new customers who are also of high value spend, and then critically they can improve loyalty for these customers. So I say the holy grail of every e-commerce company is to spend the minimum amount of marketing dollars to buy the highest long-term value of customers. So if you could acquire someone now for $1 who spends $100 with you over the next 5 years, that is an incredible investment. Spending $1 just finding someone who buys $2 worth of product, but then that's their only purchase ever is a waste of money. So that's the goal. And the problem traditionally has been on all platforms that it's possible to get the data. Well, it's very possible to just get the attribution of one order to the marketing spend. So linking together on the first row here, let's say separately an order coming from Google Search to the order coming from Criteo. The next level of sophistication up is getting the multi-channel attribution, so understanding the different touch points up to the sale. But then the improved position and where every company needs to get to for lifetime value is to understand how those multiple touch points fit in with multiple purchases. And so the bottom row is really looking at if I am a user. This is a single user view, not just a transactional view. As a user, I interact a number of times and I purchase a number of times. And really to understand the true return on investment, I need to sum up all of the money I've spent getting that user to purchase, not just the first time, but subsequent times. And then look at all of the revenue that they've brought me. So, as I said, moving in sophistication from just understanding a conversion-based attribution to a true user-based journey. So we find we work with a lot of subscription brands that have the biggest problem with this, because with subscription commerce, and there's a few examples here that we work with, Dripkit doing coffee, Athletic Greens doing nutritional supplements, and Small doing laundry powder by post. The problem that they have is that they definitely are not going to break even on the first order that those users make, probably not even the second or third orders. It's not until they're getting into users lasting more than 4 or 5 cycles, which is typically 4 or 5 months, that they're actually recovering their marketing investment. So the criticality to subscription brands is to understand not just the attribution for the first order, but the attribution for the lifetime value or the multiple orders after that. And obviously for every time that user stays subscribing, that lifetime value is increasing. So keeping that again updated as their customer journey increases. And as I said, the challenge is that these stores are all competing for similar ad budgets in their niches. There's only a limited places where they can advertise. Certainly, Facebook and Google have just increased massively their share of that advertising revenue globally, and so they're all competing with the same customer, and the ones that will win out in this hyper competitive environment are the ones that can better dedicated their spend to the most valuable customers. So it's about selective advertising, not increasing the budget. And as I said, typically these Shopify stores have a similar problem, that they know that they'd like to measure the whole customer journey, but it's broken, and they want to know which campaigns lead to sales, where do shoppers drop out for buying, and said critically which channel has the highest lifetime value. But that's just not possible with the data collection that they have currently. So Little Data has kind of moved from understanding the problem with lifetime value. It's not generally about the problem of analysis, it's the problem of the data pipeline, actually getting the raw event data in a way that they can aggregate it up into a meaningful lifetime value analysis. And the problem is that typically want to use two platforms. A lot of the recurring order data and lifetime value data are sitting in Shopify. Shopify is obviously a massive e-commerce platform in its own right, with over 1 million active stores. But they want to, in order to make anything useful in the analysis, they need to get that data into Google Analytics, the accurate revenue data, the recurring revenue data, the product data, potentially the margin data to calculate, and obviously the ad cost data. So say Google Analytics is used by 98% plus these stores. And so what Little Data is doing is basically connecting these platforms to bring the insights. So pulling in the touch points before the orders. So needing to capture all the landing pages, but also the events. So things like where do they come from, which source, which campaign. Linking that together with the sales and the recurring order data, and then pulling in the ad cost data from Facebook or Google Ads to get the return on investment calculation. And I won't go into detail into the product, but the product is about helping them link together their existing accounts so that they can get all this pipeline set up with minimal engineering work. So Little Data has built all of the client side and server side data pipeline so that they can get all these events into a format. And we've got various brands using the platform now to do this at scale. So what these brands have in common is that they're typically of a scale where they have meaningful data, trading more than a few $1 million a year annually, and in some cases, 100 million plus. But they're not at the scale. They're not sort of the Amazon kind of scale where they have a lot of data science capacity internally. So they don't have they don't have a whole team that can spin up to actually build all of this data warehouse from scratch. What they need is a turnkey solution where they can get the data in. They can push it into Google Analytics as a simplest option, or push it into a data warehouse like Snowflake is the more sophisticated option. But either way, they can start to build the analysis. And I guess what I always think is that I believe that these data scientists at e-commerce companies should be more focused on the analysis and the modeling aspect of it. That's where the differentiation can happen, and spending less time on the data pipeline, the engineering side of it, to actually get the event data in. And we also work with a number of payment data platforms. So the problem is not just that they would need to sync the data from Shopify. As I said, with things like CartHook is an upsell, quite a popular upsell product for Shopify. So they need to understand not just that the order came through, but did the customer buy something, actually in the checkout, add something to their order, and Recharge is a subscription payments business. So understanding, again, not just the first order, but the value of all the subsequent orders that's coming through from that subscription sign up. So let's take you into a little bit more detail about with the data, assuming you can get this lifetime value data in. And as I said, Little Data does that on Shopify, but you can certainly set up your own data pipeline for another e-commerce platform. Give me an example of just how you might build that report. So two simple tools, Google Sheets and Data Studio. So with Google Sheets, sorry, just wait one moment. So with Google Sheets, they have a very simple add-on for Google Analytics, which enables you to build a query, and this is necessary because it's really hard within Google Analytics to actually analyze the lifetime value data directly. But what we can do is sum up across a date range a number of this transaction revenue, and critically, what we're doing here is breaking that out by both the source medium and the customer identifier, the customer ID, which is stored in dimension 2 here. So we configure the Google Analytics add-on. We then run that add-on to generate a sheet of the raw data, so to speak. So this is looking at every transaction for every customer, for every source that's attributed to that transaction, and getting the full revenue there. So we can see for this customer, we've got about 4 million of revenue in total, and that's broken down by all of the order values. And then once we've got that, once we've got that row level data, what we can do is just build a pivot table to sum it up by user and by source medium. So what we want to do is build a table of all of the events, and here's how it would look like. We want to build a table of all of the events by user. That's the user ID on the left there, and by the medium they came from, and the sum of the revenue. So in this model, by the way, this is kind of a subscription commerce customers, and so we're assuming that customers, not just orders, can only have one referral source, that you subscribe one time, and then all of the previous orders, all of the subsequent orders would be attributed to that same source medium. Obviously, if you had a business that was more one-off transactions, you do a different kind of analysis. So then the next step would be to just connect this data source, this Google Sheets Data Studio. So again, here we're basically importing 4 fields. So the customer ID, the source medium, the sum of the transaction revenue, and then just the record count. So, and then finally, once we've got all of that, we can build our final report, which is what's interesting to the marketer is by source medium, or you could call it marketing channel, what is my medium customer value? And so you can see here, there's quite a spread, and we can see that certain channels like Facebook seem to have a slightly higher than average CLV, and certain channels, just trying to pick one off the top of my head, but yes, like Yahoo have a slightly below average. So obviously we could just more statistical analysis looking at the difference in means there. So the final topic I just wanted to cover is the kind of next stage, and this is beyond where little data goes right now, but looking at the RFM modeling. So if you could, if you can start getting this data by lifetime value, and as I said, the critical thing for us is having, for all of these customer touch points, the single customer identifier. So what we can then do is group them into buckets based on the recency of the order, the frequency of the orders, and the monetary value. So in a world of subscription e-commerce, where the subscription cycle is typically monthly, so recency might look like someone who's purchased in the last month is basically a current customer. Someone who's purchased in the last 3 months is a kind of recently lapsed customer, and kind of everyone else is a long past customer. And again, frequency of orders might be less relevant, but maybe people who have one subscription, people have multiple subscriptions, and obviously monetary value, the actual amount of money they're paying on subscription. I think in my experience, for a lot of retailers, the kind of 3x3x3 matrix, there's sort of 27 buckets, is actually too much granularity, and actually quite often they get meaningful results from just doing a 2x2x2 grid of course RFM. So then, yes, we would segment by the past value. So looking at where they fall, and then potentially optimizing for expected value. So that this is where you'd need to build some kind of revenue prediction model. Again, reasonably easy to do from Google Analytics data, because typically these things, there are certain fields that are quite predictive based on where they came from, which products they bought, where they came from, both in terms of source but also in terms of geographically in the world. And obviously then we can get deeper into analysis. And then once we've built our segmentation, and we can look at, for example, people who are recently purchased but not low monetary value, so that would be people we want to upsell to. Then we can start to automate some of the advertising strategies. So again, we identify that customer group, might be most valuable, might be some of the least valuable that have the potential to become high value. We can then launch personalized ads based on them. We can launch customized bidding strategies. So if they're more valuable, we might want to up our CPC bidding as opposed to it just having a generic one across all customers. And then we can acquire these high value prospects, knowing that those guys will stay with us based on our prediction models, and we can then reinvest that extra money in more advertising, acquiring more customers. And this works particularly well. Both Google and Facebook have now have good kind of lookalike audience building. Sort of audience, yes, it's called different things, audience match and lookalike audience, but the same thing applies. So if you can build a segment, an RFM segment, you can then import that audience, that list of emails into Google and Facebook, and if those platforms can match that user email to a customer account or a user account on their platforms, they can then allow you to retarget that very specific niche and build a lookalike audience of people who are similar to them in maybe likes, interests, geography, etc. So I think being able to build, understand, split the lifetime value of your own customers, and then say you want to acquire customers with the same lifetime, similar lifetime value expectations, is one of the most powerful tools in e-commerce today. So as I said, with Google Analytics, you have some very specific things you can do with that audience. You can export it to DoubleClick Bid Manager to retarget existing customers. You can export it to Google Optimize to personalize the content for current customers or new customers, and you can find lookalike audiences by exporting that specific customer list of emails into Google AdWords. So that's the end of my talk. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, but I would ask for any questions.
Hi, Edward. This is Jason. So I have one question. It's about lifetime value. Can you introduce your methodology when we, as a startup company, when we start our e-commerce, website, at the very beginning, we don't have too much, user data. For instance, we only have, 2,000 users, and we have, bunch of transactions. What is your suggestion to start the lifetime value from really small or limited user data set?
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. As I said, quite in that last slide, a lot of those tools, Google Analytics 360 and Audience Lookalike, are only relevant if you've already got thousands of customers. In fact, probably more than 5,000 customers would be the minimum you could do that kind of audience match on. So you're right. Well, how do you start? So I think the first thing I'd say is that, as I said, the problem with customer lifetime value tracking is that you can typically only go as far back as you set up the analytics. So I think it's really important to actually set up some of the tracking, even if you don't have the quantity of data to do the modeling at the beginning. I think just starting to capture the data in a way that you have a customer identifier and you can link together those events. It's really important to start capturing it early so that you can do a backward analysis. Typically over, if you want to build an RFM model, you typically want more than a few years of data to be able to, accurately model customer behavior. It depends obviously massively what segment you're in. So some segments, fast fashion or food or whatever, you'd expect customers to be reordering maybe weekly or monthly. But in some sectors, like we worked extensively with a big furniture retailer in Europe. The buying cycle is 4 to 5 years. So if you want to be able to understand lifetime value, you've got to be tracking more than 5 years of data to start modeling. So I think start tracking early is my one suggestion. And then I think the other thing I would say is it's possible to do some of the techniques, like for example, just to be able to understand which channels are bringing you those high value customers without large volumes. I mean, you might need just a sample size of a few hundred customers to be able to understand, to be able to split those by channel, maybe not campaign level, but just even understand, is Facebook a better place for me to advertise than Bing is a value to our customers? Does affiliate marketing really bring me long-term customers, or is that only good for getting me cheapskates who just want one order? So we've got another question. Lifetime value mentioned is more with historical data, prediction on future LTV. Yes. As I said, I think that both are important. I mean, obviously, the key thing is to start capturing historical data first. But often what you need to be able to do is make decisions based off a cohort of customers who sign up this month. And so what you want to know is which of those basically is what. I mean, let's say, for example, you want to launch a discount voucher and you want to give some of those customers an incentive to order again. So to allocate that discount wisely, what you need to know is which of those customers is likely to become a good customer in the future if you can incentivize it. So predictive, that's where predictive lifetime value comes in. What you would want to do is, as I said, to pull in as many features of those customers as possible: where they first purchased, where they came from, what products they're interested in. A lot of this stuff, you can, if you're capturing all of the e-commerce data, push in. But there's also, some of the stuff I think is really interesting to use in the prediction is some of the stuff you can see in Google Analytics, like which pages they've interacted with, maybe which of your blog articles they've read. These are all predictive factors. And then if you can start saying, okay, look, this person's only ordered this one time, but based on these other features of the customer, we think that they're likely to be a high value customer. Then you can treat them differently, even in the first hours or days after their first interaction with you. And I would add there that Google's developed quite a cool feature for Google Analytics where they have a kind of effectively a lead scoring algorithm built in, So you can decide, it will decide for you. I mean, obviously, like a lot of what Google does, it's somewhat of a black box algorithm, but you know, you can use that metric to tell you what it thinks the customer will be worth, even if they've bought nothing already, just based on the historical customer spend.
Okay, thank you for your answer from the attendees' question. I have one more question about the lifetime value. So when you are working on the LTV project, what is the top challenge? We are engineers, we are data scientists, we help the business to solve the critical problem. What is the top challenge when you are working on this type of projects?
Yeah, as I said, my experience is the challenge is not the modeling or the kind of what to do with the data once you've got it. It is the very boring but a critical engineering challenge of actually getting all of the accurate data into one place, so that the aggregation based off, across the customer orders and touch points can happen. And that's tricky for a few things. As I said, it's tricky with subscription products because a lot of the spend ends up occurring, kind of after. It doesn't happen in the customer session. So by default, with a lot of Google Analytics integrations, there would be no, that data will be lost. You'd only have visibility on the first transaction. As I said, what we developed a little data and took quite some effort is hooking into all of the recurring transactions coming through and making sure all of them are then stitched back to the original source of the customer. And then I think the other data engineering challenge is just making sure that there is a kind of match between what the e-commerce platform is saying is the total and the analytics platform is saying is the total, because immediately the whole modeling exercise or the conclusions from this sort of analysis are diminished if the output doesn't match, if you're missing orders and revenue. So just getting like that 100% match between Shopify and Google Analytics, so that at the start, the high level, the business customer, the e-commerce manager, the founder, whoever is that your internal client, once they can get comfortable with the fact that you really are comparing apples to apples and that you've got the same level of you've got 100% data coverage, then they can get comfortable in the results.
Thank you for your comments. We have one question from attendee Roy.
Yes.
Eric, can you go to the question? It's in the Q&A window. Can you see that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a very fair question. So as the trend for online sales and e-commerce increases due to COVID, how do you think managers should adapt to the evolving needs of customers and capturing more LTV? I mean, first of all, it is a statement of fact that e-commerce has benefited the last 6 months as more, all as per this conference, but also just every kind of human activity has moved more online. I think that how do managers adapt? I mean, as I said, I think what it's led to is just even more hyper competitive e-commerce environment. So I just think that there are lots of offline companies now, pushing dollars into online customer acquisition, who relied previously on, let's say, local geographic monopolies. Effectively, you sold shoes because you were the only shoe retailer in your local town. But now, unfortunately, although you still want to sell shoes and you've got an online brand and presence, you're now competing against every other retailer that can fulfill shipments to your location. So, that's obviously increased the competition for customer acquisition. And so, really, in my view, it just accentuates the need for lifetime value analysis, because you simply can't afford to waste any of your marketing budget acquiring customers that are going to be of marginal value to you in the long term. And so yeah, I think it's increased the importance of it. I don't think it's increased the difficulty. I mean, in a way, the challenge that kind of mixed multi-channel retailers had is sort of typically aggregating up the sales that happen online with the sales that happen offline to get that true customer lifetime picture. The good news is that, in a world in which people are selling purely online, it's actually a little bit easier to get all of the customer touch points, all of the sales in one place, because they're typically only being processed to the e-commerce platform. There is no kind of offline shop to consider.
Thank you for your comments for the question. There is one more question from Ethan.
Yeah, thoughts on customer churn. Well, again, for subscription e-commerce and subscription businesses in general, churn is hugely important. One of the things we've been doing for our subscription, one of the subscription billing partners, Recharge, is actually allowing them to analyze the cancellations based off channel, not just the ongoing revenue. So I guess the inverse of measuring, kind of total value or lifetime value from which channel has the highest lifetime value, the inverse is seeing which channel has the lowest churn. So just trying to understand, the particular source of customers tend to cancel in particular ways. I mean, maybe as a store, you're incentivizing people, maybe through a heavy discount or some kind of partnership. Maybe you're incentivizing customers to sign up, but then cancel very quickly, i.e. high churn. And that's something to spot and root out, because obviously not in the business's interest to acquire short lifetime customers. So I think as well as having a lifetime value, you can also analyze in a similar way churn.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I would like to have a follow-up question about the churn analysis. For most of the business case, the churn analysis, we can build a classifier model.
Yes.
To do the prediction about, one particular user, the possibility they will leave our business or service. For this classifier model, it's built offline, built on the top of the history data. But the market is so dynamic. Like the question from our attendee, the previous question, COVID-19 changed a lot of things. In order to handle the dynamic market, what is your strategy to test or validate your churn prediction model?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I think what you're saying is that the historical churn, kind of, let's say pre-COVID, might not match the kind of future predicted churn. So it's a really hard one because, as I said, in a lot of businesses, you actually need years worth of lifetime transactions to have much predictive power, because there is quite a long cycle of a long-term cycle of customer purchasing. I think we found that though with the kind of monthly subscription businesses, that typically kind of three months is enough to see ongoing behavior or not. I mean, ultimately, for a lot of subscription companies, churn either happens in the first 1 or 2 months, or it doesn't, or it happens very gradually after that. So there's a sharp drop off in the churn rate after the first couple of months. And so even if you base your predictions based on just like the last, let's say, 4 months of data, you're probably getting, a lot of the power of analysis. So I totally agree with you that customer behavior may have changed radically since, for example, a year ago, but I'm not sure it's changed radically since 3 or 4 months ago.
Okay.
Does that answer the question a bit?
Yes.
I think, yeah, that's all for the questions. We would like to thank you, Edward, for your detailed communication. You explore all the possibilities of e-commerce, particularly in field of data analytics. So we learned few applications, and it is going to be helpful for the people who are going to focus their career in e-commerce industry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. Edward from London. Thank you so much.
Bye.